Mrs. Judson, pastor's wife, was teaching one little children's Sunday school class, and now it's grown to 4. And as you can see, we need some more space in our church, and we've actually started construction on a new auditorium. That'll be 4 times, it'll be twice as wide and twice as long as what we have now. So 4 times the size there, and they've already started work on it. Although the rainy season is starting, so that the work's going to pause for that. But also actually some of the leaders in the village have come and said, the village there, it's right on the outskirts of the city there, and kind of like farming community. Our church property is 4 acres of a rice field, and that. So, we so the village, the whole village is all Buddhist. Everybody's there is Buddhist, and the leaders in the village don't really want a Baptist church there, and that. But one lady at a convenience store, there's kind of like a lot of convenience shops where you can go and buy snacks or soda or whatever you need. And I stopped there on the way to the church, and she said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to work at the church." And she said, "Well, why are you building a church here?" And of course, they think it's a building. They think the church is the building. And so, why are you building a church here? Why don't you build it where all the other Christian churches are in the other side of town? I said, because there's too many over there. And that. But so anyway, the leaders of the village don't really want a church, and they've come over and told pastor, you guys are building too fast and going too fast, and we've already been there for 4 years with this small little 15-foot by 30-foot tabernacle, and so we really need to expand that. So if you would pray with us, especially for the leadership of the village, that we're able to. It would be really great if we could win them to the Lord, and then they'd want the church there afterwards. So and that, but the church construction project is actually being built by the men in our church. We're not hiring out a company or anything like that. And because of the military dictatorship, it's been really hard for people to find jobs. So that's one way where we can help provide a job for our church families, and that. And then also with along with the construction project, we. Like I said, the property is rice field. Now, a rice field is 4 feet lower than the road that you would drive on, because they flood it. You need a lot of water to grow rice, so they flood it. So they have they build roads high up, so that they can have the rice field. Well, with our church there, most people build their houses and other buildings 4 feet above the road. So there's an 8-foot gap there. We've actually been ordering dirt to fill in areas where we have buildings, and so we can get back to and from church and have a little parking lot and all that. Sometimes it's hard to get the dirt, or we order it and the driver comes whenever he feels like it, and that, or whenever he's allowed to. Some of the quarries or areas where they would dig up the dirt is owned by the military, and so the military will just close it down and for indefinitely, So we're praying right now. We're praying for the Lord. Our church is praying for a dump truck. So if we have our own dump truck, we can, we have a lot more freedom as to when we can get the dirt. The fill for whatever we need, but also the price of the dirt, half the cost that we pay per truck is just for the driver and the truck. The other half is for the actual dirt. So if we have our own dump truck, we can get a lot more dirt because we wouldn't be paying out as much money. It'd be half the price for the dirt and that. And so that's the main material need for our church folks and that. But I just wanted to share just a couple verses here in John chapter 4, very famous famous passage of scripture. You know, the woman at the well, Jesus is at Sychar, and that. And if you look in verse 27, Jesus is already done talking to the woman. Of course, in verse 4, John chapter 4 says, he must needs go through Samaria. And there's a few reasons for that. One reason is because, he needed to win the woman at the well to Christ. And then the other people in the city were going to hear the gospel because of that. And that. But also a third reason why he went, which doesn't really get a lot of attention sometimes, is he must needs go through Samaria. He was going from Judea to Galilee, and he was going through Samaria, which is very unheard of for Jewish people at the time. And he needed to go because, I've heard a lot of messages. He needed to go because the woman needed to hear the gospel, and the other people needed to hear the gospel. He needed to preach the gospel. God the Father wanted him to go there in some way, and I'm sure all of those are true. And but there's another reason that doesn't get a lot of attention. All right, he's got the disciples are following him. Right, a disciple is a follower of Christ, one who's learning, and he, the Lord in his ministry. He starts off preaching. He calls his disciples, the 12. Of course, we know the 12 disciples who would become apostles later on, and that. So his whole 3.5 years of ministry is to help people and that, but also at the same time he's trying to train these men who are going to be apostles eventually. To carry on the work once he's gone, all right, and then of course, like Paul tells Timothy that he ought to teach, commit what he's learned to faithful men who will teach others also, right? And so one of the reasons why Jesus had to go through Samaria was he needed to teach the disciples a few things. All right, he needed to teach the disciples a few things. And if you look here in John chapter 4 and verse 27, the Bible says, and upon this came his disciples and marveled that he talked with the woman, yet no man said, what seekest thou, or why talkest thou with her? The woman then left her water pot and went her way into the city, and saith to the men, come, see a man which told me all things that ever I did. Is not this the Christ? Then they went out of the city and came unto him. And then verse 31 says, in the meanwhile, right? In the meanwhile. The meanwhile is when Jesus is talking to the woman at the well, right? The disciples came out of the city with their food, their McDonald's, right? They went to go to McDonald's to go get food, right? And so they're coming out of the city, and then the woman leaves her water pot, passes the disciples to go back into the city, and then the disciples are with Jesus, right? And she's telling in verse 29, she's telling the men of the city, come see a man which told me everything that I've ever done, right? So in the meantime, between her leaving the well and then coming back with all these people, in that time frame, Jesus is going to use this time to teach the disciples a few things, all right? And it says here in verse 31, in the meanwhile, his disciples prayed him, saying, Master, eat. But he said unto them, I have meat to eat that you know not of. Therefore said the disciples one to another, hath any man brought him aught to eat? Jesus saith unto them, my meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest? Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes, and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. And he that reapeth receiveth wages, and gathereth fruit unto life eternal, that both he that soweth and he that reapeth may rejoice together. And herein is that saying true, one soweth and another reapeth. I sent you, now he's talking to the disciples, I sent you to reap that whereon ye bestowed no labor. Other men labored, and ye are entered into their labors. All right? So Jesus is telling them, hey, I'm sending you to reap whereon you bestowed no labor. Other men labored. All right? Other men like Jeremiah and Isaiah and Hosea and all the prophets, all the way up unto John the Baptist. Those men have labored. And then he's going to send the disciples, the 12 disciples, into their labor so that they can reap labor, right? And so, even in verse 37, it says, and herein is that saying true, one soweth and another reapeth, right? And Paul in 1 Corinthians says, I've planted, Apollos watered, but who gives the increase, right? God gives the increase. And so he's teaching the disciples a few things. And he's so there's different things. When I think about missions and I think about our ministry and what we're doing in Myanmar, and especially in Molamiang, we are just reaping on what other people have labored. All right, starting with Mr. Judson, of course, where we live, Molamiang. I put it in our little photo album there. And Judson lived there for a few years. He finished the translation of the Burmese Bible. He, by himself, he translated 64 books. His first wife, Anne, translated 2 other books. So the whole 66 books of the Bible were by he and his wife. It took 47 men in London, England, took 7 years to translate our Bible into English. All right? And Mr. Judson and his wife took 25 years to do the whole Bible for Burmese. All right? And those men in England had, they were authorized by the king. The king gave them everything they'd ever wanted. They had all the best, they were from universities, and they had the best libraries and the best lexicons and different dictionaries and stuff like that. I have like 4 or 5 different dictionaries that go from one language to another. All right, at home, and I have a English to Burmese, Burmese to English, Burmese, and other ones. But so, and they had the best of everything. All right, Mr. Judson had the best of nothing. All right, and sometimes he translated the Bible in prison while he was in jail, kind of like John Bunyan did the Pilgrim's Progress in jail. But it's easier to write Pilgrim's Progress than it is to translate the Scripture or translate anything in jail and that. And so it's kind of it's actually a miracle. They're both. The King James Bible is also a miracle in its own right. Just to have a king that wasn't going to chop your head off for translating the Bible was a miracle in and of itself. But also the Burmese translation is also just as well a miracle. And I think about it. There's 2 churches in Molamiang, the city where we live in, that Adoniram Judson started right around the corner from my house. And down the street from that is a middle school. It's a middle school now, but it used to be the print shop where Mr. Judson printed the first 5,000 Burmese Bibles. He imported from China the first printing press ever in the whole country. Was brought into China by Mr. Judson for the express purpose of printing Bibles on it. And then we have another man from Maine. His name is George Boardman, and he was the first missionary ever to leave the state of Maine. And he went to Burma, and he went to Molamiang, worked with Mr. Judson while he learned the language. And then after that, he went to a different city about 6 hours south of us, the opposite direction of Rangoon. And And then there was another family, another man named Jonathan Wade. He also helped Mr. Judson for a little while when he first got there, and that worked with the Karen people in over there in Burma. And so I think of that, I think of them. I think of the other Burmese pastors through GLBM and other Burmese preachers, and our pastor, Brother Peter Judson, that Brother Bob's church in Horseheads sent back to Burma. He lived here in the States for 7 years, and then Brother DeWitt's church sent our pastor back. 8 years ago, we just celebrated our 8th anniversary at our church, and so our family is set in as I sent you to reap whereon you bestowed no labor. Other men labored and are laboring, and my little family is just entering into, their labors, and we've we've seen a lot of neat things. There's some things I actually call this scripture, this chapter, John chapter 4, really like hitting the road with Jesus, going on the road, with Jesus, and of course Jesus took a road that nobody went to. All right, everybody goes to Jericho, the Jericho road. Jesus said, no, I got to go to Samaria. I got to go through Samaria. Wait, nobody goes there. Yeah, well. You can't say that anymore, right? And we already talked a little bit about that with Burma, with us and that. But but there's some things that you get to see. The disciples got to see some things that that they would not have been able to see, experience something. This lady. Now, when Jesus is talking here. In verse 35, it says, "Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest." It's kind of interesting. Burmese people really take this verse to heart, or Asian people in general really take this verse to heart, because to grow rice from the time you plant it to the time you reap it is about 4 months, and so it really speaks to them very well. So, "Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the field." Now, when I read this, now it doesn't say it here, but when I read it in my head, this is what I think. All right, this is what I envision. All right, because I'm Italian, and like Brother Grimaldi, not as Italian as Brother Grimaldi is, but anyway. So if you've noticed, I've been moving my hands around a lot, all right? And I can see in my mind, as I read this, and as I think about the scripture, and I kind of envision it in my head, I can see Jesus talking to the disciples, and he says, lift up your eyes, and when he says look, he's pointing, all right? This is how I view it in my head, is that he's pointing past the disciples, because he can probably already see the people starting to come out of the city towards the well. That's how I'm thinking of it. The disciples' backs are to the city. And Jesus said, look up over there. You say there's 4 months and then come there. Look on the fields and look. And I can just see like all 12 of them go. And their eyes get real big, right? Because they see this huge crowd of people coming out to talk to Jesus. Now, in verse 39 it says, "And many of the Samaritans of that city believed on him for the saying of the woman which testified, he told me all that ever I did. So when the Samaritans were coming to him, they besought him that he would tarry with them, and he abode there 2 days." All right. Now remember, they only stopped because why? They were hungry and tired, right? Think of it like a rest area. Okay, or in New York they have the tollway, and so they have a little rest area. You pull in off the toll road real quick. They have a gas station there. They've got the different restaurants there, Starbucks, hopefully, Chick-fil-A maybe, and so you get, you go to the bathroom, you get all your stuff, and you just keep going, right? And that's kind of the idea of why they stop there in Sychar. But then they stay an extra 2 days, right? And Jesus is they're staying an extra 2 days. Oh no! Peter's probably going, my wife's going to kill me. My mother-in-law needs me, right? And so we got to get there. and he extends it. And of course, in verse 41, it says, and many more believed because of his own word, and said unto the woman, now we believe, not because of thy saying, for we have heard him ourselves, and know that this is indeed the Christ. What's the last couple words? He says, the Savior of the world. Now, isn't that interesting? Because Jewish people, number one, they hate Samaritans, so they'd rather go around, right? And so if Ohio was Samaria, you guys would be going down to West Virginia and Kentucky, and then over to Indiana through Louisville, and then back up north if you wanted to get to Chicago. Say if you're going from here to Chicago, but Ohio's Samaria, you can't go through Ohio, right? And so you're going to go all those extra hours, all those extra miles, where you could have just gotten on 76 real quick, then gone on 80 and been there in a couple hours, right? And so it's the same idea. And you can see this throughout the Gospels. You can see that the disciples, their only concern was with the Jews and the Jewish culture. Even after Jesus tells them to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature, even after that, then they go to the Mount of Olives in Acts chapter 1. And in verse 6 it says, when they therefore were come together, they asked of him, saying, Lord, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? They're not thinking about the whole world and all that. Even though Jesus said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature, then Jesus is going to go and be, in Acts chapter 1, he gets in the cloud comes, picks him up, and he goes up to heaven, right? And and so they're concerned, though, with the kingdom of Israel, even all the way through that. But if you notice, the Samaritans say, we know that you are the Savior of the world. The Samaritans got what the Jewish apostles weren't apostles yet, hadn't even caught. But they get to see and hear those things, see and hear those things, and with us and our family, we got to see and hear a lot of different things. And I remember trying to learn Burmese and learn how to read. Somebody showed me all the letters and how to pronounce them. They didn't tell me what the names of them all were, so I have no clue what the names are. Jasmine can tell you, like she did earlier, what the names of them all were. But I can use them. I know how to use them. And I didn't know. I know the plan of salvation, forwards and backwards in English. I can go from a lot of different angles in English, and even without my Bible, and quote the verses to you in English and that. But you know what? To say. But learning Burmese kind of a little hard, and we had a little Burmese lesson there with the numbers earlier. But to try to go there and off the top of your head, just rattle off, Payadakin I Tarago Yonji Dadu Abando di Piesi Chindo Miao Tara Atet Yaze Chinga Payadakin di Mimi Nai Debade da Tarago. Sunto mudi dang aong Loki tharo go chita mui. That's John 3:16. How do I? Oh man, I don't know. And how do I explain somebody the gospel? I don't really know. But we have church tract. We have a tract that pastor wrote and print, and we print and all that. And so the first couple times I try to witness by myself, I just read the tract. I just read the tract, just read it, and somebody will read it with me. And I met this one man and went through the whole tract. And at the end, I said, "Wouldn't you like to trust Christ?" He said, "Your Burmese is very good," and then just walked away. And I was like, "Come back. I don't want you to go to hell. Come back." But he was just like, he just thought I wanted to practice, And I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to do this? But you know what? We just keep practicing, keep trying to talk to people and that, and the Lord really, helped me out and that. But we have to go. Sometimes we have to go get a visa, and there's a military dictatorship. And how are we gonna, what are we gonna do? Are they gonna kick us out? Are they gonna tell us we can't go back anymore or whatever? But we go to get our visa, and there'd be fighting on the road one day. The very next day, we have to get on the road, and it's totally empty, nothing. No, not even any other cars driving on the road. And then we get to the military checkpoint, and they ask me for my paperwork, and I give it to them, and they ask, what are you doing here? I said, I'm a preacher, and here's a tract, and they all see we gave it to 4 of them at one stop, and they all looked, they saw the cross on the tract, and they all at the same time go, and I'm not Catholic, but that's better than getting shot at, right? And but and then we keep going out, we keep going sewing, and eventually we have a group from our church be able to come out, and we've been doing that for a while. The video you saw was our last Saturday, or right before we left. We had 25 people from our church out to go out, knock doors, and hand out tracts, and that, and one of the men there, one of the men that was helping leading the songs, his name is Winsall A. He got saved 2 years ago this past April, and he got saved at home, or right before Easter, and 2 years ago. And he got saved on a Saturday. Pastor won him to Christ. The very next day, he came to church, got baptized. First service he was in, he got baptized, and just got involved in church. A couple weeks later, he come to church. His hair was cut, and then he just got involved, and we got pastor gave me the adult Sunday school class. So I took the adult Sunday school class time. I took about 7 or 8 weeks, 2 months, to teach them how to go through the Bible and share the gospel with somebody. And then last November, Mr. Winsall A. won his first soul to Christ. And then our first Sunday back in the States, he had won another 2 people to Christ. And then we get to see it on Facebook and and that. So there's some really great things going on with our church and our ministry, and and that. But if I hadn't followed the Lord in the way He wanted me to go, even though it's opposite sometimes, and that, are you? People ask me. I don't mind. I don't mind being the oddball out or whatever, and I kind of like that. Myanmar's a little bit harder place to go to or live in, and my first thought of in the video, I said that when the military retook the government, a lot of foreigners left because of COVID, and then even more left because of the military situation, and all the other foreigners, a lot more left the country. All the other foreigners left our city of 400,000 people, the 4th largest city in the country. We're the only non-Burmese people in the whole city. All right? And what I was thinking was, yes, I finally made it. I'm a true missionary. And I didn't feel like a true missionary when I saw other foreigners in town. But the Lord uses that, and the Lord went in a direction in John chapter 4. The Lord went in a direction that most other people don't go, and all other Jews have to go this other way, and He was teaching them that He was trying to teach the disciples that He's putting them in. Into somebody else's ministry, that they get to reap the rewards of that, and we get to see folks saved, and we have a Bible. I actually enjoy being able to just already have a Bible. Mr. Judson didn't have that opportunity, and and that. But Jesus is trying to teach the disciples, hey, Hey, there's something bigger than you. It's just not just about Israel. It's about the whole world. You know, and and the Lord does the same thing with us in our own lives. You can I can tell there's different things that the Lord is using in my own life, not just from my own little ministry, in our own little church. I mean, there's churches. We already had a couple pastors try to order some of those hymn books, you know, we're not ready to do that yet, you know. But eventually, we want to be able to get hymn books to other places in the in the country, and then of course you have the Jesus is delaying. You know, I've had that. This last every January we have every February our visa expires February 6th every year. It's a 1-year visa, and and so we have to start the renewal process, extension process, like in December. This past year we had to start it in the end of October. And it was coming down to the wire, and we didn't know if we're going to get our visa renewed or not, or if it was going to get renewed late. We'd had heard stories about people who had put in their paperwork and they were waiting for like 6 months, and they went over their visa expire date, and they're still waiting for their paperwork and all that. And we wanted to get our visas renewed before we bought our plane tickets to come back here, because it's just easier that way with being able to go back. And and at the same time, we're thinking about all our plans and what we have to do to come here, and we're praying about the building and that. And so we, but it kept getting, it came to the time where we thought we were going to get our approval. Nothing happened. We're talking to our agent. We're talking to Pastor Judson. What's going to go on? And they said, and our agent said, don't buy your plane tickets until after you get the visa approval. Don't worry, it's coming. It's just taking longer than it's supposed to, and but it'll come. They'll do it, and you already paid the money, and you'll get it. Well, just to be safe, we decided, you know what? Maybe the Lord wants us to go. We were actually going to come later. And so we said, you know, maybe the Lord wants us to come earlier, and we're going to buy our plane ticket. Our plane will leave on the last day of our visa. So if I get extended, great. If I don't get extended, I'm not in trouble with the government. And we're already set. And so I did that. And then after I bought the plane tickets, 2 days later, we got our visa approval. A week after that, because I had moved our flight up, and then I moved some of our meetings up because of that. You know, what are some of our meetings that were going to be in March? I asked them if they could, we could switch to February, and most of the churches said yes. You know, and so a week after I got our visa approval, I got an email from a church in Michigan, from a mission secretary, saying, "We'd love. I don't know if you're going to be in the States, but you know, we looked you up, and if you're going to be in the States, our missions conference is March 12th through the 15th, and if you wouldn't mind coming, if you have time for that." I looked up the church. We had no clue, and we don't know anybody at this church. My wife said, "Do you know anybody at this church?" "No, I don't know anybody at the church." You know, we looked at the church. It seemed like a decent church to go to, you know. So I said, "You know, we're going to go," and so we went. I said, "Yes, we have these dates available. Yes, we're going to be in the States," and. And I said, we got to figure out how they found out about us. You know, how did you hear about us? So we get there. We came back. We had some of our meetings and that. Now we're going through our. I put on the video. We're looking to build. You know, and we're trying. Another side reason of coming back was maybe we could help raise some money for the construction project. And so we came. We were praying that the Lord would give us. We have 70 supporting churches. Maybe the Lord would give us 20 churches each to give us $1,000, because it's going to cost about $20,000 to quadruple your space. Isn't that great? So 20 churches give $1,000. Well, we got within 2 weeks. We already had 4,000 promised. Then we ended up getting to that church in Michigan. And the church in Michigan said, you know what? They had heard some of the story, and and pastor said, folks, we'd like to get them to the halfway mark. They already had 4,000, so they were going to give another 6,000 to get us to the halfway mark. And he said, Brother Tim, tomorrow you're going to present, and we're going to recommend to the church to try to get you that $6,000 just to get you to the halfway mark. And so I presented. I did everything. The very next day, pastor gets up and he says, we were talking, and we'd like to recommend to the church that to get him to the halfway point, just to give him the $6,000 to get him to the halfway point. And everybody said, sure, that they're going to take a vote. They took a vote. And then he said, well, I was also talking to the deacons, to some of the deacons this morning, and they're going through their own building program, over $2 million worth of building. And they needed a architect's drawing, and it was going to be some big number. Well, the Lord gave him over $100,000 discount on the architect's drawing. And the pastor said, I'm giving you, he said, I'm talking to I went and talked to the deacons and said, hey, God gave us a $100,000 discount. Basically, that's like giving us $100,000. And he said, you know what? I think if we gave him the other 10,000 too, that's not even a tithe of the discount God gave us. So within like the first 2 months, the Lord gave us the money for the building. The day after I arrived, the day after we landed in Albany, we found our truck, and we got our truck, and the Lord just worked all that stuff out. But I said all that to say the Lord delayed our visas so that we could be at that conference. Then we asked and said, how'd you find out about us? Because we don't know anybody here or whatever. Sometimes we, a friend of ours and like I know Pastor Manny Penny because of Brother Bob, and stuff like that. But the mission secretary said, I just Googled Independent Baptist Missionary and your website popped up. I was like, well, thank God for Squarespace and all of the internet stuff that they do. And she said, I sent out 60 emails to 60 different missionaries, just a shot in the dark to see who would respond back, and we were one of, 4 or 5 that responded back, and that. But it's really interesting how the Lord delayed himself 2 days, in a sidecar to talk to all those people and to get the gospel to those who were looking for it, and the Lord sometimes delays because there's something else on the other side of that, And when they got back to Galilee, Jesus got back to Galilee. There was a man there whose son needed to get healed. As soon as they got back, so the disciples thought they were late, but they were actually right on time. And then Jesus healed that man's son at the end of John chapter 4, and so sometimes we think God's gonna. It's just taking too long, right? But you know what? There's something on the other side of that. He delayed our visas, us getting our visa, so that he could get us to that conference, which would in turn help us out with the building project. And who knows how many people are going to get saved, at that, because of that building, and that. But so you never know. But you get to see some things. You go on the road with Jesus. You go wherever Jesus is leading you. Sometimes you're going to go places you don't necessarily want to go, or it's really hard to go, or nobody else is going there. But you know what? You're going to see some things that nobody else is going to get to see, and experience some things, and Lord be able to use you in a certain way. The Lord, because of the coup, the Lord has actually allowed us to reach some military families with the gospel. Burmese military families that wouldn't have been able to hear the gospel otherwise, or wouldn't even wanted to hear the gospel otherwise, without all the instability going on, over there. And so we're really excited about what the Lord is doing. When we get back to Burma, we want to start a Bible Institute and to help our people learn the Bible more, and especially to train preachers. And then when we have somebody who's ready to go out and pastor a church, we'll go with them. I'll go with them to go help get a church off the ground, and then come back, get another fella, and go to another place. So we want to end up starting churches out of our church, but we're looking for the pastor first. So it's a little different than kind of opposite from the last, 20, 30 years of missionary work. The missionary goes and starts the church, is the pastor, gets a pastor, then goes on to another place, and does the same thing over. Whereas we'd like to get the pastor first before we start the church, instead of starting a church and looking for a pastor after. And so we think we can, we believe that the Lord will multiply those efforts. We'll be able to start more churches that way than the opposite way around. But Pastor, thank you for letting us come. Excuse me? Okay, so you have the idea is like Paul went to different cities and he started churches. Sometimes we forget that he had a Titus and a Timothy with him, and that he took with him. Like he got to Derbe and he found Timothy, and then he brought Timothy with him, and he was training them as they went along, which is what we're doing in our church. And we're trying to help people grow and disciple them through on-the-job training, so to speak. And then we're going to take them, and when a guy says, "Brother Tim, God's called me to start a church," okay, well then we're going to train him to be a pastor, and then when he's ready, we'll say, "Okay, where's the Lord laid on your heart to start this church?" We've got 75 villages in an island right across the river from our city. All right, that's pretty close, within 20-minute drive, so wherever, I will go with that man, help get the church off the ground, come back, get another guy, hopefully, and so we're looking, we're looking for fruit that will remain. Correct. Yes. Right. Right. Yes, sir. Right. Correct. Sorry. No. We're looking to raise pastors up from within our church, or if another pastor eventually, like sometimes, this is how like a Bible like Hiles Anderson got started. Dr. Hiles wanted to train preachers to preach, and it was mainly for their own church, but then other churches started sending other people. Now we're not looking for people outside, so to speak, really first, but if the Lord sends them to us, that's another story. But the main idea, the philosophy is we'd like to find the pastor for a church first, and start that church with the pastor already, instead of me trying to start a church and then find the pastor after the fact. You understand the difference? All right. Yes, ma'am. Yes. We are talking about national pastors, and that we have, as far as I know, our family is the first independent, first and only, so far, as to our knowledge, the first independent Baptist family, fundamental Baptist family, who's a missionary permanently residing in Myanmar. There's a lot of other people that go back and forth, like Brother Bob does. There's other missionaries there that are evangelical, non-denominational, this, that. Jehovah's Witnesses were there 12 years before I got there. There's that. But our family is the first independent Baptist family to be residing in Myanmar. That's the whole reason why I say we, at the end of the video, we say we are the Davis family in Myanmar, because there's some confusion with people coming and going and that. But I will say I do know of 2 families who are on deputation right now to go. They haven't gotten there yet, but they are on their way to go. But so all of our work, though, is with the national people, Myanmar people. My family and our pastor's family are the only ones that speak English in our church. As you heard, everything in our church is in Burmese. So, yeah. Anybody else have a question? Oh, all right, Pastor.
Grab the microphone. I got a question for you, brother.
Oh, yes, sir.
And since we're kind of fielding a couple quick questions here, as for some of our folks, you've heard Brother Davis talk about Adoniram Judson, and for some of you may not know who that is, and that's okay. Basically, going back to late 1700s, 1800s is when Adoniram Judson, about 1812, right? About 1812, actually went to be the first American missionary to go from the United States of America
to any country,
anywhere, at any time, as a foreign missionary.
Yeah.
So that is the background of going to Burma. He was the very first, what we would call modern missionary, to go out from the United States. Up to that time, prior to that, England and France and different places, Europe, were sending missionaries to various places. But in the early 1700s, 1800s, when, as a country, we're just becoming a new country in that time. And so Adoniram Judson gets a burden, a call to go there. And there's a lot of interesting things about how that worked out. But it was something that jumped out at me, brother. It might be because of the country, but he went on February 6th, 1812.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's funny.
That's just kind of funny, because when you said it back here, every year they have to renew their visa on February 6th.
That's funny.
Now, I don't know if that's just a government policy. If it is,
it has to do with. So we arrived on November 28th. And when we got there, we had a visa. The visa that we got was for 70 days. So 70 days after November 28th is February 6th. And then after that, I've renewed every year since then.
So every year
it's been a random thing. It was because it was random.
But February 6th, 1812 is when Judson left Boston to go to Burma on February 6th, 1812. So we're just about 210 years
211, yeah,
since Judson goes to Burma. And now Brother Davis is there for the last couple of years doing the work and kind of picking up. And as he said, right now, only American on the ground.
Right.
Okay. And a lot of the foreigners have left because of the government coup and stuff. This is going to sound maybe like a bad question, brother. I don't mean it bad, but I want you to address this, because here we are 200 years after Judson goes there, translates our Bible, English Bible, into Burmese, and 200 years later, we're still trying to get churches established.
Right.
Address that. Thank the Lord for what we're seeing. Folks are being saved, but how come? Why do we need to send missionaries to Burma after 200 years?
Okay, so, well, there's a couple of different reasons. The first
that's
reason,
why I want you to address it.
Okay, so why would you send missionaries to Burma after a couple hundred years? Actually, yes, to tell you the truth, and there's a lot of Burmese churches, there's a lot of Baptist churches, there's a lot of independent Baptist churches, a lot like ours, um, in Burma, you know. But to answer the question, why send missionaries to Burma, the number one would be to be obedient to the command of Christ. Technically, if you're really obedient, you know, every church, Jesus said, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature," right? And he said, "Go and teach all nations. Go ye therefore and teach all nations." That's ethnic groups, all right? Nations is the Greek word is the same as ethnicity, where we get ethnicity from. And so in Burma, there's 300, all right, just in Burma, just in Myanmar, 303 technically, ethnic groups. But so each church in America, or each church anywhere in the world, is there, if they're going to be obedient to go into all the world and preach the gospel. Well, if an American church is going to be obedient, they have to send a missionary and get the gospel to Burma somehow, to be obedient to Christ. Not just that, not only Burma, but all the other countries in the world and all the other ethnic groups in the world, however many ethnic groups each country would have in it. And Myanmar is just one of those, you know. Another one would be we're there to help facilitate the brethren that are already there, the national pastors and young men and young ladies who have surrendered their lives to the Lord. We want to help encourage them as much as possible. Now, they'll be able to do a lot more with the Burmese people than I will be, than I'll ever be able to do. And so one of those things is the Bible Institute. One of those things is the Lord has really put on my heart about some really good Bible study reference books and stuff in Burmese. You know, like a Bible atlas that everything's in Burmese. You know,
because we kind of take that for
Bible,
granted.
or even a concordance.
We have a lot of those tools here.
Correct.
They have none of those.
They have none of those. So, you know, they don't even have a concordance to go through their Bible to find other verses that have the same, you know, you want to know which verses talk about love, or, you know, any word in the Bible, you can look that up. In the Burmese Bible, there's no concordance for that. So, not even that. But so, you know, there's that. But Burma, and just on a numbers level, okay. Most missionaries go to 5 countries. Most American missionaries go to 5 countries in the world: Philippines, Mexico, Australia, Brazil, and the United Kingdom. Those 5 countries. You know, so why go to Burma? Well, why not? Most of the people are going to those other 5 countries, and the rest of the 190 something countries, you know, not as many. And Burma, for sure, you know, people are scared to go there. You know, I have a little photo. I came across 2 photos. One was a landscape, and I wrote on top of the photo. It had an area where I could put words on it. And I wrote on top of the photo, "Going to places others dare not go." And then I found another photo of a lady who has tattoos all over her face, and I wrote on there, "Going to people, preaching the gospel to people others dare not preach to." You know, people who are too scared to go to places like that. And for a lot of there's a lot of places churches aren't reaching in the world just because it's too scary. But you know, but we're trying to demystify that, and, like, you know, there's no reason to be scared about, you know, about Burma or Myanmar, whatever, you know, and things that would be scary in other places aren't, like in China, people, you know, underground church, we're doing everything openly. The military asks me who I am. I tell them I'm a Baptist preacher. You know, other countries, they say, don't say you're a preacher. You know, they'll really take you to jail for that. But not there, not in Myanmar. So, but the number one reason is to is to obey.
What you just
obey God.
said is also a miracle, because not too long after Adoniram Judson gets in Burma, he winds up in prison for preaching.
No,
Well, they thought he was a spy.
they thought he was a spy, right?
They thought he was Brother Bob
Because
DeWitt.
of the British, yeah, they thought
Brother
he was
Bob
Brother
DeWitt
DeWitt.
got some time in
So
jail.
the British came to fought 3 wars to get Burma, make it part of the British Empire. All white people are the same. Okay, all white people look alike. All right, I go down and people say, kids would yell at me. I'm going on my little moped. Kids are yelling at me, English, English, English. I'm like, I'm not English, I'm American. And but same thing with Judson. They thought he was British just because he's white. So of course thought he was a spy. But so anyhow.
Amen. All right. Anybody else question? Okay, Amanda.
So
that sounds like a lifelong question with a lifelong answer.
So it starts with so I in 6th grade I did my homework assignment.
Just for real quick too, Amanda, you missed. We probably need to have you tune in to this morning's Sunday school lesson. He covered almost all of that. So we'll get you a copy of that. Honestly, it'll help you to go. That's okay.
It starts where it really starts, boils down to, and I failed to mention this morning, is it starts where you're at, just trying to give the gospel to somebody that you know or don't know or whatever. I grew up in church. My dad drove a bus. I would go out on Saturdays to visit the bus kids with him, and I had a little New Testament, and one day we were out visiting our bus kids, and I saw a kid out playing. Never seen him before, never rode the bus before. I'm going to go invite him to church. All right. I'm 11 years old. Okay. Too scared to talk to adults. But I could talk to this kid. And I went over, started talking to him, opened my Bible, stuttered through the whole thing. And at the end, the kid wanted to pray with me and get saved. All right. And I was so excited. This is the first person I ever led to Christ. Right. Found out later that his great-grandmother and my great-grandmother are sisters. But anyway, so it starts there, and then because I was, I really do believe that the Lord called me to be a missionary when I was 12, because I had already been involved in trying to bring people to church, trying to get the gospel to people since I was 11. And so that's where that starts. And then when I was a kid, I just read biographies. Every biography I could find on a missionary, American or English, or William Carey, Hudson Taylor. A pastor could give you a list of good missionary stories that you could read, and then of course with church here. And being involved in whatever projects, the missions, Faith Promise missions giving. If the church does, a lot of churches in the States will take a missions trip someplace. And, whenever Pastor Manypenny says, hey, we're going on a trip, you could go on the trip with them,
That's kind of like what we have. Marissa Gelfin left last Thursday. Yeah, last Thursday she left to go to Zambia. Now she's a pastor's daughter, just graduated high school, but she's actually, I talked to Brother Rich about it on Tuesday, and he said, I'm just praying for Marissa that the Lord's will be done in her life. She's seeking as to what God wants her to do. Am I to be a missionary? What do I do with my life? And she just finished up high school, and so. He said, I'm really praying that the Lord will direct her and give her wisdom as to which way to go. But she's going to take the next, we'll say, 10 days to go to Zambia to work with a missionary there. So it's kind of like a short-term trip, and to check it out, find out, is this really God's will? You get there and God may lead and speak in some way. My daughter did something similar to that probably about 14 years ago, roughly, and took about 4, maybe 6 months. Went to Honduras. We went down, and I knew Brother Delarca there in Honduras, very good brother of ours, friend of ours. He and Mrs. Cora, and she moved in with them for about 6 months and taught English to their kids that Mrs. Delarca would work with. Brought the kids in every day for school classes. Becky taught English, and they taught her worked on her Spanish, and so back and forth. It worked real good, and she had some Spanish background when she went. When I went back down to get her after that time, we went out and did some soul winning in the area, knocked on some doors in various places. She became my interpreter. She's like, "Hey, Becky, come here. You got to tell them I'm trying to say that I got somebody to talk to." And I fuddled through a little bit, and then she stepped in and helped. When we got all done, here was my point. When we got all done after 6 months, I thought, God's going to probably put her down here on missionary. She loved the Delarcas. And she looked at me as we got back, and we were just talking in general. And I said, "Well, what do you think, baby? What's God doing?" And she said, "I've been really praying about it, Dad." She said, I got to tell you, this was her words now. She said, "If God is going to bring me here to be a missionary, I'm going to have to find a good godly man back home first, because these guys down here, ain't none of them godly enough to serve the Lord." I said, "Ooh, you got pretty high standard." She said, "No, they're pretty bad." I mean, in all honesty. So she realized if that was what God was going to do, although she loved those people and loved being there, she didn't feel that it was the right time, because other things had to take place. So she had a clear direction now. Don't you know, the very day that we get off of the plane, we go to Columbiana to the youth rally. And after the big youth rally over here at Columbiana, that very day, we get off the plane and we go directly to Columbiana. And at that youth rally, they're having all this stuff for the teenagers and stuff and so forth. And then at the end of the rally and the invitation, all done, they drop the curtains on the tent, and we go out the back of the tent, and the staff at the church there are setting off fireworks. They're just, and I look over, and at the end of the tent this way, probably about 30 feet down, is Dan Leonard. And Becky looks over and says, "Dad, isn't that Dan Leonard?" I said, "Yeah." "Yeah, it is. Boy." And long story short, that began to take the next direction for her life, to be able to say God was going to move. And the rest of, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story is Dan and her eventually saw fireworks other ways. And but it was God moving, and then also checking and praying about it, and being willing to say, "Hey, I'll check this out," And so that's what Marissa's doing right now this week. She's gone to Zambia on a short-term mission trip to get the experience and be a part of what's going on, and the Lord may open up the avenues, and certainly puts. I'll tell you what it does. It'll put a burden in your heart. It'll make you thankful. If God hasn't called you to go to one of those fields, it'll sure make you appreciate a whole lot more what God's done for you here, at the minimum. I mean, You'll come back here going, "Boy, thank God." That was a blessing. We pigged out down there today on food, and there's still enough down there we could all eat 2 or 3 more times and still have leftovers yet today. All that food we had today.
Yeah.
Brother?
Yeah.
Tell them about the monks, what they do every morning, or tell real quick. Tell the monk story.
So, on the video, you couldn't really see it too well because it just showed the monks' faces. But so the Buddhist monks, they're in the brown, dark red robes, and so they go out every morning for the offering, and there's actually a little gong on my table, and there's they'll go single file with bare feet, so whatever's on the road, or bare feet, and they have a big black bowl that they hold in front of them, and they open it, and they go out to every house, and in front of them there'll be a little kid with a gong that I have back there, and they'll ring it dong, and then the little kid will shout something, and everybody will come out their house with some kind of offering. Sometimes it's rice. Most of the time it's rice. Sometimes it's vegetables. Sometimes it could be a little bit of fish or other meat. Sometimes for people who want to give cash, they have other guys with silver bowls behind the line come by for cash, and then they go every morning. Then they go back to the monastery, put all that rice and all the monks. Like if you have 100 monks in a line, or 50 monks in a line, or 30 monks in a line, somebody gives, you're given 30 different times if there's 30 monks in a line. So get out the small spoon when the line's longer, right? And but they'll get to the monastery, then they put all the food together, cook it all up, and have one big meal for the day. And they only eat once a day over there. Or the monks only eat once a day. Most people eat, the regular people, they'll eat twice a day. But very modest. It's a mountain of rice, white rice. That's what Sophia says. It's a mountain because they hill it. It looks like a hill on top of the plate. And then they'll put, and Pastor knows because we were just there yesterday, we ordered curry, and they eat a lot of curry over there. But they'll have sometimes chicken or fish or beef. We had chicken and beef yesterday. And we literally got how many pieces? 3 pieces of chicken. Tiny piece. I mean, like small. It wasn't this chicken like you have downstairs today.
That chicken breast down there you saw in the pan, chicken breast?
Yes.
That's about 2 servings of that chicken
right,
breast.
Right.
So it was out of maybe one of
so they'll put on that mountain of rice, they'll put like 2 little pieces of meat and a lot of chilies.
So she basically said it was a serving. Those 3 little pieces of meat was a serving for 2 people.
Right. 2 Burmese people. Not Americans.
Yeah. So you're inviting that again.
So
my point is that we are so blessed in our country with so much. We take so much for granted.
So, anyhow, Brother Darrell.
So how far are you from where Walter Whitman are? Because when he was region, when he was here, he described it was like poverty. They were eating every other day, and all that. Where you are, they're eating.
Well, okay. So what he's right. Well, so the story that you're relating is from a man named Pastor Tainwini. He lives in so the Burma's the diamond-shaped kite with a little tail at the bottom. I live where the tail starts. Pastor Tainwini lives almost dead center of the diamond part. It's about a 12 or 15-hour drive from us. But the local people there who have jobs and stuff like that, most of them would eat the same way we do. That story was talking about Pastor Tain had like 80 orphan kids. And this one pastor, and the pastor's salary there is not like the pastor's salary here. This one pastor taking care of his own kids plus another 80 more didn't have enough money to have enough food for all these kids, for all those orphan kids in the orphanage.
But the orphan kids were because of the extreme poverty.
Because of those orphans had come from a different part of the country where there was war, and that pastor took them out of that war zone to take care of them. Some of them are real orphans with no parents and stuff like that from the local area, but Pastor Tainwini's place with those orphan kids is a lot different now than it was 15 years ago. That story that you're talking about is 15 years old, 2008. So they eat a lot differently now, because of the support through GLBM and stuff like that. But most people in the country, if they work a job or whatever, they'll eat twice a day, once in the morning, once in the early afternoon, or later at night sometimes even, too. But it's rice, it's a little bit of fish paste, even, and stuff like that. But our people, Our people make about, the average wage is $3 a day. Okay, so to build a $20,000 building on $3, when a person makes $3 a day, they tithe 30 cents off that. Then they have the other $2.70 to take care of their family, and try to give to the building program or the missions program, and you know what I mean. So, so the average wage is about $3 a day. We actually have one man in our church, the man that was giving the gospel out. He's got one eye, and he's a bricklayer, and he lays the straightest bricks I've ever seen. He gets paid $5 a day. So he gets paid $5 a day. So it is funny, but it's true. I can show you the photo of him laying bricks. But so now different areas would be a little bit more, like the villages, people would have a little bit less in the villages, but they're also raising their own chickens, they're raising their own animals, they have their own gardens, stuff like that too. Yes. We live in a city, 400,000 people. My wife's never seen a snake. So anyhow, we have king cobras. There's king cobras. There's pythons. The world's second largest amount of pythons in the world is in the Everglades. The first largest being in Burma, Burmese pythons. And we saw them in the Everglades. She's never seen one where we live. But we could go, I could take you 20, 30 minutes down the road, and I'm sure we could find something pretty quick in the villages. I'd really like to get to the villages eventually. Our church is in a little village that's still technically part of the city limits, but it's a little bit more country, hence all the chicken noises and all the animal noises you heard in the video. So it's a little bit different. Some of the inner cities, like Rangoon, actually, where Pastor Tong Lian is actually would have be a little bit more rougher area than Pastor Tang Wen-Yi's place, and even have people that are maybe a little bit poorer even than Pastor Tang's. So, but to answer your question, how far away am I from them? I'm 7 hours west. Rangoon, the main city in the country where Pastor Tong Lian is 7 hours west of me. Pastor Tang Wen-Yi is another 9 hours north of that. And then another 15 hours north of that is the second Peter and Pastor Tanzal up in Calais there. So, and a lot of other preachers scattered in different places in between. So.
I thought I saw one of the hand up this way. Somebody else have a question? No? I should bring my mic back up. Anybody else have a question for Brother Davis?
No, we answered everybody's questions.
Any other points of interest? Miss Maria, yes, go ahead.
If I have a permanent residency visa, yes, I could own property. Personally myself. The taxes would be a lot higher. I bought a van. I bought a van, but it's in our pastor's name. So anything that I would buy, I'd probably put it in our pastor's name or the church's name, just because it would be cheaper that way. And if for some reason I had to leave, it's already in the church's name. It's already in the.
And when you say property, Maria, are we also talking like land, right? So
yeah, no. I'm talking about land. Like actually, we'd like to purchase an actual piece of land, and build our own house on it. Our rent is $400 a month for a 6-bedroom house.
Does it still remain, even though you would have the title, does it still remain property of the government?
Yeah, I would have to pay taxes on it and stuff like that. Yeah. So, but it's still, but I could. Permanent residency visa would give me a lot of the perks and responsibilities of a citizen without being able to vote. So I could do almost everything except vote. But I have a Burmese driver's license on my regular visa now. There's really no reason right now for me to get a permanent residency visa. I don't really need it. I can do what? They're probably not giving them right now anyway, even if I applied. But actually, technically, we've been there 4 years. And I have my visas uninterrupted. I've renewed every time, and we've always renewed in the country. I've never left. This is the first, when we came in February back to the States for furlough, it's the first time I've ever left the country. So a lot of other foreigners, they'll leave and go to Thailand, renew their visa, and then come back. We've never done that. And technically, we have the same visa. We just keep extending it. And right now it's been 4 years. At the end of this next February would be 5 years, which is where I would, if I wanted to, they would allow me to apply for permanent residency. But even if I applied right now, with there's a civil war going on over there and stuff like that. And actually 2 weeks before we left, Pastor Judson's wife's village got in the way of a battle. How dare the village get in the way of a battle? They had one army on one side, another army on the other side, and they were lobbing over the village, and the village got destroyed. And a lot of Mrs. Ruth Judson's family came and lived at the church for 2 weeks, and then everything died down, and they all went back and rebuilt everything. And it probably looks like that never ever happened now. But so with the Civil War and everything that's going on over there, they wouldn't even approve me to get a permanent residency right now. And I'd have to wait. No, I would still have to renew that permanent residency once a year. So it's pointless at the moment. So it's just a little bit different status. It's a little bit more, we get a little bit more perks than we do now, but we don't really need them. So it's about the same price too. So, why bother? And there's no dual citizenship. So. Yeah. So even my rental doesn't have my name on it. I rent the house, but but one of our church members' names is actually on the lease, because and we have to report to immigration with all that, with our rental information, all that, report to the immigration office in the city. But not too many foreigners have ever really lived in Molamyang since the British era. So they really don't know how to handle foreigners. So it's really easy. And so we have to have it's just easier to have a Burmese person's name. My name's not even on the lease for my own rental. So, but I'm allowed to rent. Everybody knows I'm the one living there. It's very easy to find me. So.
Amen. Amen. All right. Any other questions for Brother Davis? Anything else you thought of? Okay. Very good. Brother Tim, thank you so much. Really, it's been an honor to have you and your family.
It's been a pleasure.
And
thank you.
I really want to thank you personally for taking time. When you have to be in 70 churches in 9 months, that's a lot of moving around, a lot of trying to get to people. And so they cleared out some spots and made it possible to be with us. They could have said, well, preacher, how about we'll do one service, and they could have got to a couple other churches or whatever. But they decided to be with us today, and I want to thank them for doing that. And thank you for making a beautiful day, Father's Day. We had time to fellowship downstairs, good food, and so forth. I believe, as we mentioned a moment ago, there's still plenty down there. Please, please, please do not leave without taking something with you. We've got food that needs to be taken and enjoyed. Okay, take some with you. That would be great. Okay, and I'm just trying to think. Also, in 2 weeks, don't forget, we're going to do something very similar in 2 weeks with Brother Coral. On July the 2nd, we'll have our luncheon and then go right into the service in the afternoon like we did today. I do want to ask you, okay, here's a quick question for you. Do you want to, and since you guys are the ones that are the what's the word I want to use? You stayed, you endured. Do you want to try to do that next Sunday again? Because what we did last summer is we did this all through the summer. We just had lunch in the afternoon right at church, and you bring a sack lunch with you, or bring a covered dish or something, whatever. We can keep it kind of simple. It doesn't have to be extravagant. Um, but if you want to do that through the summer, then you know that you can invite someone to come and say, "Hey, we're having lunch right after church. Come to church with me and have lunch." And but the problem with that is it does put a little extra stress on us who are setting things up and whatnot. And I don't want any one person. I kept trying to tell Brother Tim today, don't be doing all the dishes. We got help. We want other people to get involved. But of course Tim, he's in his restaurant mode. Amen. He's doing dishes and cooking, and he's doing his thing. And I went to go down there this afternoon and check on the grill, and Steve already had the grill all set up. I kind of had it prepped for him, and I told him, now, in a minute, when you get caught up here in the kitchen, come outside. I want to show you what. And I went to go out there and tell him, okay, now when you get ready, I want you to cover this with some foil, and here's the striker, and here's this, and here. I got out there and he already had it all done. I'm like, man, you guys got it. But I don't want them being the ones that's all through the summer missing out on church every Sunday. You see what I'm saying? So if we can take turns and make it easier so they don't have so much to do, I don't mind. We have a special day like today. Appreciate all that. And then, of course, when Brother Coral's here, we're going to have a big day Sunday. So that being said, do you want to have lunch again next Sunday afternoon? Daryl says yes. That was a sign language for yes. Okay. Are you just door knocking? That's yes. That's yes. Is that motorcycle? Vroom, vroom, vroom. all who would like to stay next Sunday, if we had lunch in the afternoon, you'd be here. Hold your hand up real high and wave at me. Okay. That seems like enough to do it. Okay. You're going to be gone, Miss Michelle. You're going to be tuning in Florida, aren't you? Okay. Michelle's going to be tuning in, live streaming in Florida. Okay. All right. Well, let's do that, and we'll pass the word around. We'll just have to kind of figure out what we want to do. I don't know that we need a theme. Just bring something. Whatever we bring, we'll eat. We probably could wrestle up some stuff. Okay. So next Sunday, we'll do that afternoon thing again, and then that'll put us in the mood for the following Sunday. 2 weeks from today, Brother Coral will be here, and we'll be wrapping up, finishing the Revival Fires Conference right here with Brother Coral. Yes, sir. Okay, there you go. Brother Daryl just gave you the menu for next week. Any cereal you want to bring?
Reese's Puffs.
Any cereal you want to bring will be acceptable, right? You gotta have sugar. Woohoo! That's what we need. More sugar. Cereal could do it. Hey, sometimes I get home at night and I'll be like, how about a little bowl of cereal? Just do a little cereal, top it off, just to put something on the stomach, take my evening pills, and about 2 minutes later start doing the sugar, like, ooh, okay, time, go up and then crash. Right? All right, well, let's stand together. We'll dismiss with a word of prayer. I'd like to encourage you to, if you want to go downstairs and fellowship some more, you're welcome to. I saw somebody had some puzzles down there earlier, and you might have some other questions.